Hi there and welcome to The Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's February 18th, and there are just 30 days until the first day of spring. We are finally through the 30s. Today we celebrate the French botanist who created the modern strawberry, and we also learn about the sweet little orchid known as the moccasin flower. We hear words today that offer perspective on our loss of wildlife and habitat. And we grow that garden library with a book about one of the world's best botanical illustrators. And here's a hint. She was a dear friend of Alice Lounsbury. And then we'll wrap things up with the story of a new rare plant house at the Fairchild Tropical Garden, rebuilt after Hurricane Katrina. Here's today's curated news. Today's curated news comes from the Earth Island Journal, and this article is called The Little Fern That Could, and it's a piece that was written by Anna Gibbs. This is a very detailed piece about a truly magnificent discovery. It was made in July of 2004 when a group of scientists and oil drillers pulled up a sampling from the ocean's floor, and they found the fossilized remains of this fern that's called azolla. Now, azolla has some remarkable properties. It actually creates land. It makes land. What the researchers are now suggesting is that azolla can be used to build rich soil at a rate faster than land is subsiding in areas like the Netherlands or in other areas that are dramatically impacted by climate change, where the sea level is rising. So azolla is very important. And then at the end of the article, they point out many other uses for this little fern that could. Check this out. In Iran, the fern is used to filter radioactive wastewater from nuclear plants. In Sweden, it has its own cookbook, and it's been used to reduce mosquito populations in Kenya by choking larvae under its dense cover. And in 1980, it was even launched into outer space, where it could be studied as part of a scientific mission. This is a very detailed scientific read about a magnificent plant that really could hold one of the keys to our planet's future. If you'd like to read this article for yourself, all you need to do is search for the word fern in the Facebook group for the show, and this post will pop right up. Now, if you're not in the Facebook group for the show, don't sweat it. All you need to do is search for Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend in Facebook. And then once the page pops up, request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here are today's brevities for February 18th. Today is the anniversary of the death of the French botanist, gardener, and professor at Versailles, Antoine Nicolas Duchesne, who died on this day, February 18th in 1827. A specialist in strawberries and gourds, Antoine was a student of Bernard du Jussieu at the Royal Garden in Paris. A plant pioneer, Antoine recognized that mutation was a natural occurrence and that plants could be altered through mutation at any time. As a young botanist, Antoine began experimenting with strawberries. Ever since the 1300s, wild strawberries had been incorporated into gardens. But on July 6, 1764, Antoine created the modern strawberry, the strawberry we know today. Strawberries are members of the rose family, and they're unique in that their seeds are on the outside of the fruit. Just how many seeds are on a single strawberry? Well, the average strawberry has around 200 seeds. To get your strawberry plant to produce more fruit, plant in full sun, in well-drained soil, and trim the runners. And I can't tell you how many times I've run into problems with strawberries because gardeners do not heed that first piece of advice to plant in full sun. Often I will find these plants in part sun, and that does not make them happy or fruitful. So if you want your plants to do well, mind the sun. And today, the showy lady slipper became the state flower of Minnesota. It happened on this day, February 18th, in 1902. The lady slipper orchid was discovered in 1789 by William Antoine. The lady slipper's common name was inspired by the unusual form of the third petal, and it's what makes the bloom look like a little shoe. During his lifetime, Charles Darwin repeatedly tried to propagate the lady slipper orchid. He never succeeded. The lady slipper's growing conditions are quite particular, and that's why they are almost impossible to keep in a traditional garden. And it's also why I get so sad when I see gardeners showing off a lady slipper plant. They're so excited to buy it. They have no idea that they will very likely never be able to grow it and keep it in their garden. It's also illegal to pick, uproot, or unearth the flowers, which was a problem in the 1800s when people collected them almost to extinction. Since 1925, the lady slipper has been protected by Minnesota state law. In the wild, lady slippers grow in swamps, bogs, and damp woods. They take forever to grow, and they can grow for almost a decade before producing their first flower, which can last for 2 months in cooler weather. As long-lived plants, lady slippers can grow as old as 100 years, and they can grow up to 4 feet tall. To Native Americans, the lady slipper was known as the moccasin flower. An old Ojibwe legend told of a plague that had occurred during a harsh winter. Many people died, including the tribal healer. Desperate for help, a young girl was sent to find medicine. But the snow was deep, and in her haste, she lost her boots and left a trail of bloody footprints in the snow. The legend was that her footprints were marked with the beautiful moccasin flower every spring. One summer, when Henry David Thoreau came upon a red variety of lady slipper in the woods, he wrote about it, saying, "Everywhere now in dry pitch pine woods stand the red lady slipper over the red pine leaves on the forest floor, rejoicing in June." In unearthed words, today's words are by the nature writer Robert Finch from his book, Common Ground. Robert's words offer perspective on our loss of wildlife and habitat. It's quite sad. He writes, "I remembered reading that during the Great Flight year of 1926 to 1927, over 2,300 snowy owls were shot and kept as trophies in the United States alone. One of the greatest difficulties for modern conservationists, I think, is to rightly conceive how much we have lost. We trudge so far today to see so little that the result is often a strangely pathetic elation." It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Ellis Rowan 1845 to 1922 by Kate Collins. This book came out in 1989, and it's part of an Australian book series that featured its most outstanding artists. My copy arrived last month, and it features incredible full-page color plates of Ellis's drawings of Australian native birds, flowers, and insects. Born in Melbourne, Ellis married Frederick Rowan in 1873. Ellis discovered painting after Frederick encouraged her to develop a talent, and painting became a passion that Ellis pursued until her death. Ellis's life was full of adventure. She traveled and painted abroad. 3 of her paintings were presented to Queen Victoria. My favorite stories about Ellis concern her wonderful friendship with the botanist and writer from America, Ellis Lounsbury. And together they created 3 beautiful books about the flowers of North America. During the First World War, Ellis was living in New Guinea, and at one point she painted 45 of the 62 known species of birds of paradise. As a woman living during the mid-1800s, Ellis followed the dress code of her era. Wherever she went, whether on an expedition or at home, Ellis was always impeccably dressed. Ellis's daily attire included heavy ankle-length dresses, high collars with full sleeves, crinolines, corsets, whalebone stays, and a hat. Just before Ellis died, the federal parliament in Australia debated whether or not to buy 1,000 of Ellis's paintings. The Australian artist and novelist Norman Lindsay called Ellis's work vulgar, believing wildflowers were unworthy subjects for art. But ultimately, Ellis's paintings were purchased for $5,000, and they are now a treasured part of Australia's National Library. This book is 52 pages of the beautiful work of Ellis Rowan. You can get a copy of Ellis Rowan, 1848 to 1922 by Kate Collins and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $9. But be forewarned, this is a rare book. It's out of print, and there won't be many left at that price point much longer. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. It was on this day, February 18th, in 1996, that the Miami Herald shared a story about rebuilding the rare plant house at the Fairchild Botanical Garden. Here's what it said. The born-again rare plant house at the Fairchild Tropical Garden, called Windows on the Tropics, has a new roof and new walls and a whole collection of staghorn ferns mounted like prize stag heads overlooking the inner courtyard. The new $1 million conservatory at the Fairchild Tropical Garden that is being built on the footprint of the hurricane-demolished rare plant house is nearing its opening day. It will be the last piece of the Hurricane Andrew puzzle to be put back into place in the garden. More than 2,000 plants will be on display in the conservatory, showing about 1,000 species grouped in themes or windows onto the natural tropical world. One window into plant and animal interactions will feature everything from ant plants to carnivorous plants. And recently, a buttonwood tree was bolted to a wall for the display beneath which visitors will walk and come eyeball to eyeball with insect-dissolving pitcher plants. The window featuring epiphytic or air plants will open into the old orchid display room, which will include orchids, bromeliads, and climbing philodendrons. The new conservatory path will lead through the most modern of greenhouse spaces and will house economic plants, those used by man, like coffee, pepper, vanilla, and other tropical food and medicinal plants. 3 new waterfalls are being built in the new lower level of the conservatory, where ferns, tree ferns, and palms will reside. And here the conservatory becomes a sensual experience. The building is the largest aluminum structure in Florida that also meets the 120-mile-an-hour wind code. Soaring 12 feet taller than the old rare plant house, the plastic roof has clear-story windows that open for ventilation and come with built-in storm shutters. And plants no longer will be subjected to chemicals and city water, but to rainwater collected in 2 cisterns that will hold 45,000 gallons. The conservatory will be opened on March 23, 1996. And instead of having a guest speaker, the garden is letting Windows on the Tropics do all the talking, says Barbara Schuler, the Director of Development. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. Hey, thanks for spending part of your day with The Daily Gardener. If you want to read even more botanical brevities, just head on over to thedailygardener.org. That's where you can find all the stories, biographies, and books that I share on the show. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. It has lots of goodies in it, and I try to make the newsletter like you're getting a marvelous letter from a garden friend. You can always find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Twitter, and you have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for listeners of the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. Last but not least, you can easily share your gardener greetings or book submissions by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Maple Grove in Wyoming, Minnesota, with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, and Eric Begay. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.